Oskar Schindler was born on April 28, 1908, in the town of Svitavy, located in the Moravian region of what was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, now in the Czech Republic. He grew up in a middle-class German Catholic family. His father, Hans Schindler, owned a small factory that specialized in manufacturing agricultural machinery, while his mother, Louisa Schindler, was a homemaker. Schindler's childhood was relatively comfortable, growing up in a warm family environment. He had one younger sister named Elfriede, who was 7 years younger than him. The family lived in a large house, reflecting their relatively stable social status in the town. As a child, Oskar was intelligent and active, but he was not particularly interested in academics. He had a sense of adventure and independence from an early age, enjoying outdoor activities, especially riding his bicycle and exploring the rural areas around his town. Although he was not an outstanding student, he exhibited great social skills, with a charismatic personality that made him well liked among his peers and friends. The relationship between Oskar and his father was somewhat complicated. Hans Schindler was strict, particularly when it came to work and Oskar's future. Hans hoped that his son would follow in his footsteps and work in the family factory, but Oskar was more inclined towards a freer and more adventurous life, leading to some tension between them. Oskar Schindler married Emilie on March 6, 1928, when he was 19 years old and she was 20. Emilie came from a wealthy, Catholic, farming family in the Sudetenland, which is now part of the Czech Republic. Their marriage was a blend of different backgrounds, as Oskar was more urban and business-oriented, while Emilie was raised in a rural environment with traditional values. Initially, their marriage was filled with optimism and hope. The couple moved to Oskar's hometown of Svitavy and lived near his family. However, their relationship faced many challenges over the years. Oskar was known for his charismatic and outgoing nature, which sometimes led him into a lifestyle that included infidelity and heavy drinking. Emilie, on the other hand, was more reserved and deeply religious, which often put her at odds with Oskar's behavior. The father of the Emilie offered up a dowry of 100,000 Czech crowns. This money was meant to help the newlyweds have a strong start in life. But Schindler instead spent it on partying and a new luxury car. He was not a faithful husband, frequently dating other women and having sexual affairs. However, Emilie did not seek a divorce. Soon after his marriage, Schindler quit working for his father and took a series of jobs, including a position at Moravian Electrotechnic and the management of a driving school. After an 18-month stint in the Czech army, where he rose to the rank of Lance Corporal in the 10th Infantry Regiment of the 31st Army, he returned to Moravian Electrotechnic, which went bankrupt shortly afterward. His father's farm machinery business closed around the same time, leaving Schindler unemployed for a year. He took a job with Yaroslav Simek Bank of Prague in 1931, where he worked until 1938. Schindler was arrested several times in 1931 and 1932 for public drunkenness. Also around this time, he had an affair with Aurelie Schlegel, a school friend. They had a daughter, Emilie, in 1933, and a son, Oskar Jr., in 1935. Schindler later claimed the boy was not his son. Schindler's father, an alcoholic, abandoned his wife in 1935. She died a few months later after a long illness. In the early 1930s, Schindler was living in the Sudetenland, a region that was part of Czechoslovakia at the time, which had a large ethnic German population. The Sudetenland was an area of intense nationalistic tension, where ethnic Germans felt increasingly dissatisfied with the Czechoslovak government. Schindler, being part of the ethnic German community, was significantly influenced by these tensions. When Hitler came to power in 1933, his policies of German expansionism and the promotion of German nationalism resonated strongly in the Sudetenland. During this period, Schindler joined the separatist Sudeten German Party in 1935. Although a citizen of Czechoslovakia, Schindler became a spy for the Abwehr, the military intelligence service of Nazi Germany, in 1936. His tasks for the Abwehr included collecting information on railways, military installations and troop movements, as well as recruiting other spies within Czechoslovakia in advance of Nazi Germany's planned invasion. Yet Schindler's decision to join the Sudeten German party was not really political. He was interested in making business deals, widening his connections, and selling more contracts. He was arrested by the Czech government for espionage on the 18th of July 1938 and immediately imprisoned, but released as a political prisoner under the terms of the Munich Agreement, the instrument under which the Czech Sudetenland was annexed by Germany on the 1st of October. Schindler applied for membership in the Nazi Party on the 1st of November and was accepted the following year. Schindler was promoted to second in command of his Abwehr unit and relocated with his wife to Ostrava, on the Czech-Polish border, in January 1939. He was involved in espionage in the months leading up to Hitler's seizure of the remainder of Czechoslovakia in March. Emilie helped him with paperwork, processing and hiding secret documents in their apartment for the Abwehr office. Schindler continued to work for the Abwehr until as late as fall 1940. In September 1939, World War II began with Germany's invasion of Poland. Schindler moved to Krakow, which was now under German occupation, and used his connections with high-ranking Nazi officers to acquire a factory previously owned by Jews. This factory, known as Emalia, would later become the focal point of Schindler's humanitarian efforts. The city around Schindler changed quickly under Nazi occupation. After the invasion of Poland, the Germans carried out measures that isolated and persecuted the Jewish community. They forced them to form a Jewish council, wear a white armband with the Star of David, register their property, and, later on, live in an isolated ghetto. Much of Schindler's workforce came from the Jewish community in Krakow. Under the new laws, he didn't have to pay them as much as non-Jewish workers, which helped increase his profits. With the financial backing of several Jewish investors, including one of the owners, Abraham Bankier, Schindler signed an informal lease agreement on the factory on the 13th of November 1939 and formalized the arrangement on the 15th of January 1940. He initially acquired a staff of 7 Jewish workers, including Bankier, who helped him manage the company, and 250 non-Jewish Poles. At its peak in 1944, the business employed around 1,750 workers, 1,000 of whom were Jews. Schindler also helped run Shlomo Wiener Limited, a wholesale outfit that sold his Enamelware, and was leaseholder of Prokazina Glashut, a glass factory. On the 1st of August 1940, Governor-General Hans Frank issued a decree requiring all Krakow Jews to leave the city within 2 weeks. Only those who had jobs directly related to the German war effort would be allowed to stay. Of the 60,000 to 80,000 Jews then living in the city, only 15,000 remained by March 1941. These Jews were then forced to leave their traditional neighborhood of Kazimiets and relocate to the walled Krakow Ghetto, established in the industrial Podgórze district. Schindler's workers traveled on foot to and from the ghetto each day to their jobs at the factory. Enlargements to the facility in the 4 years Schindler was in charge included the addition of an outpatient clinic, co-op, kitchen, and dining room for the workers, in addition to expansion of the factory and its related office space. Though the food situation in the Krakow ghetto was not as bad as other ghettos in Nazi-occupied Poland, hunger was still a problem. After the Nazis banned the Jews from earning a wage, the Jews purchased their food from shops inside the ghetto using a ration card system. Schindler knew his workers were not getting enough nutrition, so he bought extra food for them. This was not the only problem. Gradually, the Nazis removed more people from the ghetto. The actions of the Schutzstaffel, the SS, alarmed Schindler. He saw them use violence against the Jews and knew something had to be done about it. On the 13th of March 1943, the ghetto was liquidated and those still fit for work were sent to the new concentration camp at Plaszów. Several thousand not deemed fit for work were sent to extermination camps and murdered. Hundreds more were murdered on the streets by the Nazis as they cleared out the ghetto. Aware of the plans because of his Wehrmacht contacts, Schindler had his workers stay at the factory overnight to protect them from harm. He witnessed the ghetto's liquidation and was appalled. He decided to get out and to save as many Jews as he could. Oskar Schindler used a mixture of bribery and persuasion to ensure those in his factory were deemed essential workers in the context of the German war effort. This way, they avoided being sent to the extermination camps. Schindler took another step to ensure his workers' safety by altering his factory's rosters. He listed a special skill for each worker, reducing the likelihood they would be taken away. But the situation worsened with the arrival of Amon Goeth. Goeth was the new commandant of the Plaszów concentration camp. He was a violent, sadistic Nazi tasked with moving the Jews from the Krakow ghetto to his concentration camp. This had a negative impact on Schindler's factory. He complained about the situation, saying his workers arrived late and were less productive. Some of them were clearly traumatized, having witnessed beatings and hangings inside the concentration camp. Goeth's plan was that all the factories, including Schindler's, should be moved inside the camp gates. But with a combination of diplomacy, flattery, and bribery, Schindler not only prevented his factory from being moved, but convinced Goeth to allow him to build, at Schindler's own expense, a subcamp at Emalia to house his workers and 450 Jews from other nearby factories. There they were safe from the threat of random execution, well fed and housed, and permitted to undertake religious observances. Hoping to save his workers from suffering or death, Schindler used his powers of persuasion to arrange the construction of a separate concentration camp beside his factory. This way, the Jews could be housed away from Goeth. But even this scheme was far from foolproof. The accountant Itzhak Stern recalled how the SS would unexpectedly barge into the factory and inspect what was happening. Schindler would keep them distracted by bringing them to his office and offering vodka. He even bribed the SS if he had to. Schindler was arrested on suspicion of black market activities, accused of black marketeering and bribing Goeth and others to improve the conditions of the Jewish workers. He was held for most of a week and released. In 1943, Schindler was contacted by Zionist leaders in Budapest via members of the Jewish resistance movement. He traveled to Budapest several times to report in person on Nazi mistreatment of the Jews. He brought back funding provided by the Jewish Agency for Israel and turned it over to the Jewish underground. By the middle of 1944, things were not looking good for the Nazis. The Soviet army was approaching from the east, while British and American troops moved from the beaches of France towards the German border. The SS began closing down the easternmost concentration camps and evacuating the remaining prisoners westward to Auschwitz and Gross-Rosen concentration camp. Goeth's personal secretary, Mitek Pemper, alerted Schindler to the Nazis' plans to close all factories not directly involved in the war effort, including Schindler's. Pemper suggested to Schindler that production be switched from cookware to anti-tank grenades in an effort to save the Jewish workers' lives. Using bribery and his powers of persuasion, Schindler convinced Goeth and the officials in Berlin to allow him to move his factory and his workers to Brünnlitz in the Sudetenland, thus sparing them from certain death in the gas chambers. Using names provided by Jewish ghetto police officer Marcel Goldberg, Pemper compiled and typed the list of 1,200 Jews, 1,000 of Schindler's workers and 200 inmates from Julius Madrich's textiles factory, who were sent to Brünnlitz in October 1944. On the 15th of October 1944, a train carrying 700 men on Schindler's list was initially sent to the concentration camp at Gross-Rosen, where the men spent about a week before being rerouted to the factory in Brünnlitz. 300 female Schindler-Juden were similarly sent to Auschwitz, where they were in imminent danger of being sent to the gas chambers. Schindler's usual connections and bribes failed to win their release. Finally, after he sent his secretary, Hild Albrecht, with bribes of black market goods, food and diamonds, the women were sent to Brünnlitz after several harrowing weeks in Auschwitz. In January 1945, a trainload of 250 Jews who had been rejected as workers at a German mine in Galicia in occupied Poland arrived at Brünnlitz. The boxcars were frozen shut when they arrived, and Emilie Schindler waited while an engineer from the factory opened them with a soldering iron. 12 people were dead in the cars, and the remainder were too ill and feeble to work. Emilie took the survivors into the factory and cared for them in a makeshift hospital until the end of the war. Schindler continued to bribe SS officials to prevent the slaughter of his workers as the Red Army approached. On the 7th of May 1945, he and his workers gathered on the factory floor to listen to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill announce over the radio that Germany had surrendered and that the war in Europe was over. As a member of the Nazi Party and the Abwehr intelligence service, Schindler was in danger of being arrested as a war criminal. Bankier, Stern, and several others prepared a statement he could present to the Americans attesting to his role in saving Jewish lives. Schindler had succeeded in protecting more than 1,000 Jews from the clutches of the Nazis. But it had been an expensive operation, and his fortune was gone. No longer a wealthy man, Schindler lived in Regensburg and Munich after the war. He also provided evidence against certain Nazis, including Amon Goeth, who was hanged on September 13, 1946. The final decades of Schindler's life were not ideal. His relationship with his wife, which had been difficult from the beginning, fell apart completely. His post-war business ventures proved unsuccessful, though he did have financial support from the Jewish community. He even went to Israel once a year to celebrate his birthday. In 1949, Schindler emigrated to Argentina, where he tried raising chickens and then nutria, a small animal raised for its fur. When the business went bankrupt in 1958, he left his wife and returned to Germany, where he had a series of unsuccessful business ventures, including a cement factory. He declared bankruptcy in 1963 and suffered a heart attack the next year, which led to a month-long hospital stay. Remaining in contact with many of the Jews he had met during the war, including Stern and Pfefferberg, Schindler survived on donations sent by Schindlerjuden from all over the world. For his work during the war, on the 8th of May 1962, Yad Vashem invited Schindler to a ceremony in which a carob tree was planted in his honor on the Avenue of the Righteous. Schindler received awards for his efforts, including the German Order of Merit in 1966. On October 9, 1974, Schindler died of liver failure at the age of 66. He was buried in Mount Zion Cemetery in Jerusalem. Oskar Schindler's story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times, the actions of a single individual can make a profound difference. Through his courage, compassion, and willingness to risk everything, Schindler saved over 1,200 Jewish lives during one of history's darkest chapters. His legacy lives on not only in the lives of those he saved and their descendants but also as a beacon of hope and humanity in the face of unimaginable evil. Schindler's List stands as a testament to the extraordinary impact one person can have when they choose to stand against injustice. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Oskar Schindler, a man who proved that even in the midst of war and hate, kindness and bravery can prevail. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below.